What's up, everyone? So, I was tagged into a thread here in Retropi Gaming about dual-booting Raspbian with Retropi. So, after answering a few questions and so on and so forth, and seeing how there's a lot of people interested in this, I'm going to go ahead and do this video. Now, I've always recommended to dual boot Raspbian and Retropi when you're using Retropi instead of using it as a standalone. Reason being is because it gives you a desktop environment that takes 90% of the work in the command line out. So if you're new to Retropi, if you're new to Linux, period, make sure you have Raspbian first, because like I said, it makes everything 10 times easier. You don't have to do everything in the command line in order to try to modify or fix something. You actually have a graphic user interface to play around with. But enough of that. I have, just like with all my other videos, I have to VNC into my Pi to show you how this is done, so I can record it. So I got my VNC server set up already. Connect to it. Okay, so we are now in Raspbian. So when you first install the image, it's done the same way as installing the image for Retropi as a standalone on your SD card. Same exact process. Get the Raspbian image from the Pi Foundation website and then write it to your SD card, put it into your Pi, and run the initial setup. Now when you do this on your first install, yours is going to look a lot different than mine. I did tinker around with mine, not too much. I moved my toolbar from the top to the bottom, but once you do the update and the upgrade, yours should look similar to mine because of the graphics update. Mine's runs I'm up to date with all my packages for Raspbian. So once you run your update and your upgrade, you should have a little bit nicer, more crisp, refined GUI interface. So to get started, we're going to assume that you already burned Raspbian onto your SD card, you got it running, you got it updated, everything's good to go. So you are ready to install Retropi. So if we open up our browser, it might take it a minute because of the lag between the network, but if you go into your browser and type in manual install Retropi, I already have the link here. In fact, I'll even put this link in the comment, in the description of this video. You'll come up to this page. It's actually the GitHub page for Retropi. So it tells you have two different ways of installing it. You can install it as standalone, which everybody's more familiar with, but this is how you do it through Raspbian. So when you're ready, like I said, once you got Raspbian fixed and everything and ready to go, and you're at this point, this is what you do. You want to start up a terminal, and if you need a walkthrough, go through this page. Go to this page. It tells you everything. So you don't need to worry about this. That just tells you to check your how much free space you have on your SD card. If you're running anything between if you have a 16 gigabyte SD card, you're golden. Raspbian takes up about 2.5 gigabytes of storage on your SD card. Retropi is what, like a gig and a half, something like that. So as long as you have a decent size SD card, you shouldn't have to worry. The next part, it tells you to make sure that your Raspbian distro is upgraded and updated. So as long as you, that's why I went ahead and told you go ahead and update and upgrade. Down here is how you get the install. So this is ran just in case to make sure that you do have the ability to git clone on your Raspbian image. That was actually needed for the earlier versions of Raspbian, but Raspbian Pixel you shouldn't have to do this. But just to be on the safe side, go ahead and run it just in case. If you do, if it does, it'll just say it's already done. See, so it'll just do that. It'll tell you that it's already there. So see the CD, don't worry about that. You don't need that. That's kind of redundant why they put that there. You don't have to change any directories, and as long as you are in your home.py directory, as long as you see pi at Raspberry Pi, you're golden. If you see something blue like this, then you need to make sure you are out of that and in your home Pi directory. So first things first, we need to git clone all of the files that we need. So if you see this command right here, git clone, and it gives you the link of the git clone to get all the Retropi setup files. So what you do is you go in here, you can copy it, come into your terminal, and then right click and paste, and then just hit enter. I'm not going to do it because it's just going to throw errors all over the place for me because I already have everything. But you run that to make sure that you have it. Well, to get all the setup files. And then after you do that, you come down here and it says CD Retropi setup. So what that does is it changes the directory to the setup directory for Retropi. Yeah, Retropi setup, like that. And by the way, to show you what I'm talking about having a user face, making it a lot easier. This is the same. Switch over to as this. So when you see this in your directory or in your folder, this is the same as this in the command line. The only difference is, well, you have graphical icons and all of this. So here, that is the file that we want to run. So once we are in our Retropi setup directory, the very first thing you need to do after you git clone it, and the only time you'll need to do this, is the chmod +x Retropi setup. So what that does is it changes the permission file of that script to make it executable. So it's just chmod x Retropi setup.sh. So you run that, you type that in, you hit enter, and it changes it to where it can then be executed. And then it's just sudo Retropi setup.sh. Once you do that, it will start up the Retropi setup script in the terminal. From here, you would install all the core packages. Which it'll say something. It'll look a little different than mine. It'll say, "Got a basic install. Are you sure you want a basic install from packages from core and main?" Select yes. It'll run everything, and then after that, you can go to manage packages, manage core packages, main packages, optional packages. So if you use a PS3 controller, or if you want to install Kodi, you can go ahead and do that here. Your driver packages, you know, your PS3 controller, your Xbox, Xpad, anything that you need to have your drivers for. One thing that you do need to make sure that's installed, let's see if I can remember where it's at. When you do it this way, you have to make sure that you have the USB driver installed because or enabled. Because when you do it in this method, other than the standalone method, it doesn't automatically read the USB stick. So if you're trying to put in all your ROMs back in via USB thumb drive, it won't pick it up until it's activated. I haven't had to do it in a while, so I'm trying to remember how it's done. Back, is it under main? No. I don't think it's under experimental. Optional. Wait, no, I think it's under, okay, configuration and tools. So this is where you can come in and change if you want Retropi to boot up automatically when you start up the Pi other than Raspbian. I set mine to automatically boot into the command line just to make it easier for me, because sometimes, you know, I use my Pi for everything. I do a lot of development work, so, you know, instead of having it boot up into Raspbian or into Retropi all the time, I just let it boot into the command line, and I put in the commands to start whatever I want. But this is where you come in. If you come into this area, auto start, Wi-Fi, USB. Is it in here? Raspbian tools. Install Pixel desktop environment. Huh. I wonder if that wasn't there before. So hey, y'all might be able to do it this way. For those who want to give it a try, I haven't used this method. I've never seen this method in here. Heck, you might be able to install it through Retropi. So if you want to try it that way, go ahead. But I do suggest going ahead and getting the image file, because once you have it, it's there. If you need a re-image, you have it right there. But if you do it this way that I showed you, I know this way surefire works. But that's pretty much it. I mean, once you do the git clone of the Retropi setup folder and then run your Retropi setup, you can do everything from here. But that's kind of handy to know. That was under configuration and tools, and where was it? Not auto start. Oh, Raspbian tools. So that's kind of nice to know. So if you, instead of having to image your current SD card, I suggest give that a try. I haven't used it, so that'd be a good experience. So if you do try it that way on your current setup, let me know how it works. But after that, just exit out, and then you want to reboot. Now, as like I said, for my setup, I came into the Raspberry Pi configuration, which that was preferences, Raspberry Pi configuration, and I have it set to boot command line into the CLI. Auto login as Pi. That's my initial setup. Once you do it that way, it might, for some reason, there's a bug. It used to not to do this, but as long as you do this, you're good. You're golden. And then you just reboot your Pi. Because I'm in the VNC viewer or server, I'm gonna have to go server. To get out of it, but yours is just reboot, or before I exit out of here, when you go to logout, you have shutdown, reboot, and log out. If you log out here, use the log out, it just reverts back into the command line. Reboot, that's self-explanatory. It reboots and then starts the command line or whatever you have initially set up to boot into. But if you, for easier switching between the two, if you hit log out, it'll boot into the command line, and then you can type in the emulation station command. But I'm still SSH10, so I'm going to use this. So I'm going to use my SSH here. This is the command line. This is how it looks just in an SSH if you're used to this. But on the physical Pi, when you're in the command line, you have start X. This starts Raspbian. Okay? Don't put that on here. All it is just start X. I was just doing that to show you. Of course, then you have emulation station that starts up Retropi, and you can also, if you have Kodi on, type in Kodi, and it will boot Kodi as a standalone. So you don't have to be in Retropi or emulation station. Well, yeah, Raspbian or Retropi in order to run Kodi. You can do it right here from the command line. So that's pretty much it. Self-explanatory. It's kind of cool that I found that you can install a Pixel through Retropi. That's kind of a cool added feature. I've never done it that way. In fact, I haven't had to re-image my SD card in about 6, 7, 8 months, and I do a lot of development work. So that's just to say, say something good about it. So yeah, I didn't show you while I was still in Retropi. So if you're in emulation station and you're in the LX terminal and you try to run the emulation station command, it will throw an error saying that it cannot run while the current X session is running. So if you look here, it says new X desktop on Raspberry Pi 1. This says it's opening up a new X session. So what this means is the graphic environment that all Linux based desktop environments run in is a X session. You can actually go onto Google and do some just type in X session or X for Linux, and it'll give you a basic rundown of what the X session is, what an X server is, and so on and so forth. That'll give you a good idea on how Retropi works and this, that, and the other. Let's see. To alter a buried config file, I normally don't mess around with the config files. All of my scripts that I write actually interact with it. So if I want to modify anything, I normally work with Ruby, so I use IRB all the time. So I mean, I got well, I actually have to be root for that, but I do have the PyPyPerGem, which allows me to interact with the GPIO pins. I have TK library, which is standard with Ruby, that allows me to do graphic applications in Raspbian. Everything else, I mean, like, you can even use this as a command line rather than a bash shell. You can go system start X or emulation station. You can do it that way, where you can even use the backtick and go start X like that, and it'll fire up emulation, Raspbian. So when I go to modify my Pi, I try not to modify any core config files, especially with my operating systems or my environments of that nature. What I do is I write a script that either runs a completely new program or adds another feature to my Pi. But yes, you can come in with a SSH and run, go into wherever you need to go, and you can go sudo nano, like nano tc rc local. Did I do that right? Yep. So you can do it that way, like the RC local file or the bash RC file, stuff of that nature. In fact, as you can see, I have my ZRAM. My ZRAM script here that I got from a guy on GitHub, and definitely check that out too, because that is memory compression. What it basically does is it takes a little bit of your CPU processes. It adds a little more processes to your cores, but what it does is when your memory becomes inactive and it's stored in your memory, virtual memory, what ZRAM does is it compresses that information, kind of like how WinZip compresses your applications and files, so you can makes it easier and faster download on the internet. And then when it's needed again, it decompresses it and puts it into physical memory. With this, I'm able to get a 880 memory split onto my GPU. So again, ZRAM is phenomenal. It even does help out with the emulation on Retropi. I was even be able to run my my Dreamcast emulation a lot better than I did at a standard stock without ZRAM. Again, it still needs a little bit of tweak. It's not perfect on the Raycast emulation, but I only have heat sinks, and I'm not about to go overclock my Pi and this, that, and the other without the proper setup. So, but with this, it does help out dramatically on the speed of how your Pi works, and emulation is beautiful. But I'll leave that for another day. I'm already at 22 minutes. I have a habit of doing this, so I apologize for that. But that's pretty much all it is. It's easy enough to do. Hopefully I answered all your questions. If there's anything else that I missed, or if there's something that you're not sure of, please hit me up on Facebook or leave a comment here. Until then, happy gaming.